Here.
Gelb.
Present.
Ogle.
Here.
Moderson.
Here.
Kenny Vanderhaar.
Here.
Nolan.
Here.
Cahill.
Here.
Cremery.
Present.
George.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Thornton.
Here.
Feltner.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Chen.
We have a quorum. Next, let's talk about the agenda. I have a couple of comments. Of course, there's a lot of people here about the Franklin property proposal, so Don has suggested that we defer his report so we can get right into that, because several board members have indicated they need to leave at 6 or some other time, so we want to be sure we have enough people to vote on that if we vote on it. And my second comment, as you all can see, it's listed for board action. Well, I raised my eyebrows when I first saw that, but here's my editorial comment. Don't feel like your arm is being twisted, that you have to take board action tonight if you don't want to. If the board membership decides, hey, we want to take another month, well, then we'll take another month. On the other side of the coin, I think about the dog park situation where everybody was in agreement, but we couldn't take board action because it didn't say for board action. It said receive and file, so we had to call a special meeting. So here our options are open. If we want to take board action tonight, we can. And if you don't want to, well, then we'll just postpone it another month. But you can decide that after you hear the discussion and have a chance to think about it. Are there any other comments about the agenda? Changes, suggestions? All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is approved. Next, let's turn to the minutes of the April meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any questions, changes, comments, corrections to the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of the April meeting are approved. Next, we'll move on to item A for board action, the Franklin property proposal. And is there a staff presentation to kick this off?
A very brief one. We have talked about this at the last meeting, and we've also sent you material ahead of time. You have a recommendation in the way of a park board communication. Ben has been leading the effort in terms of public comment on this, and I did ask Ben to make sure we get clarified what your role is tonight, and to also speak a little bit about the process, which I think is important for you to hear. He won't reiterate the proposal, because actually the proposal is not something you're voting on tonight. You're voting on whether or not this is excess cemetery land. So Ben, go ahead and just introduce it, please, and then we'll try to answer your questions, and I'm sure we've got folks that want to comment too.
Chairman Galloway, members of the Des Moines Park and Recreation Board, Ben Page, Assistant Director. I'll be brief. As Don noted, this evening you've been asked to determine if a portion of Glendale Cemetery is excess for the purpose of disposition for a proposed development. To draw your attention, to give you an idea of where this piece of property lies, I'll direct your attention to the overhead camera here. If you can fit in and zoom out 1 second. The area in question is proposed as the area above Franklin Avenue here, which is where my finger is, the red boundary on the north and west side, and then the blue boundary on the south and east side shows the proposed area. To give you additional boundaries to know bearings of where you're at, the green box is our community garden program. To the right is the Franklin or the Northwest Community Center, and to the south is Glendale Cemetery, as well as the new Wayland Trail that cuts through on the west side. As all of you are well aware of, the City of Des Moines Parks and Recreation Department maintains 7 cemeteries, which 6 are considered active or available for services. Now, some process to get us to the point where we are tonight with the Park Board communication and staff recommendation to you was significant. On April 20th, the Citizen and Cemetery Advisory Committee met and discussed the proposal as a receive and file. That same evening, the Wayland Park Neighborhood Association, on their own behalf, set up an informational meeting to hear the proposal. The following day, on the 21st of April, Merle Hay Neighborhood Association also set up a meeting to hear more additional information on the proposal. On the 10th of May, the City of Des Moines Park Department set out notices to neighborhood associations for a public meeting. In addition, we sent notices to everybody within 250 feet, property owners, that is, of this proposed location. On the 11th of May, the Citizen Cemetery Advisory Committee met again and took board action and approved the proposal with no contingencies, just approved. And then on the 17th of May, a week ago on Tuesday, we hosted a public input meeting at Northwest Community Center where we invited those folks that we sent notices to. And we spent time there answering questions and going over the proposal. Tim Marlowe, who was here tonight from Curly Top LLC, delivered a presentation and went over questions and answers, as well as we provided answers as well. Late in the week, as a follow-up, late in the week of the 23rd, as a follow-up to that public input process, staff requested an official recommendation from the neighborhood associations that were present at these meetings, which is once again Waveland Park Neighborhood Association, Merle Hay Neighborhood Association, as well as Beaverdale Neighborhood Association, who was at the meeting on the 17th. Those have all been included in your packet of information. We received those late on Friday, so you should have those. If you haven't, let me know, and you take a chance and you can look those over. Just some cliff notes on those. As you'll notice, that the Waveland Park Neighborhood Association did pass this proposal, and they have some details in their letter. Merle Hay also passed this proposal with some details in their letter, and then the Beaverdale Neighborhood Association opposed this, and they had some details in their letter as well. So that's where we're at tonight with you, with a staff recommendation to review this, and if appropriate, I will turn to the chair for public input, and we have city staff from other departments here that may be needed to answer the questions.
Could I ask you a question, Ben?
Sure.
I got Waveland Neighborhood Association, but I didn't get Beaverdale or Merle Hay.
Okay, you should have gotten those. Did anybody else not get letters?
Here's one. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I guess I did.
I don't
Yep.
think any of them came in time for the packet
Yes.
distribution.
But one was emailed to
We
us.
sent one out that came on Friday, and then I think the other two came over the weekend,
Yep.
possibly, and were sent
Correct.
Monday.
Okay,
We
so-
did get two of them that we emailed to you on Friday, and then later on Friday, we did get another one, and we gave those to you on Monday.
I got one Friday.
Yep, and then we made sure, too, that we provide hard copies for folks who did not have access to email that we know of. And then tonight, at your podium area, you've all provided, again, the 3 letters. So I believe you have representation, too, from the neighborhoods here tonight that I see out there that are here to help answer questions as well.
So why don't we handle it this way? While Ben is standing there, let's let board members ask any questions they want of Ben or of other staff. And then when that gets done, then we'll have comments from the audience. And then when that's done, then we'll have our board discussion. How does that sound with everybody? So fire away with any questions. Go ahead, Bob.
50 years from now, what might that property be used for?
Great question. Staff did an analysis of the cemetery needs, and once again, as we just stated earlier, we do have 7 cemeteries, 6 are considered open for business. And specifically looking at Glendale, we did an analysis based on the number of burials per year, just arbitrarily over the past 5 years to get us a starting point, then the available acreage left at Glendale to note what the average space for a burial is. And not all burials are apples to apples. There's different things you can buy from the city cemetery process. You get a double lot, a single lot, a different style lot. So we just took the general basic level lot sales, and we can project with 2 things in mind. Burials are declining because folks are choosing more cremation options. And our numbers show that over the last 5 years. So the number we reported, you might have read it in your park board communication or well in the paper, is 75 years. And we're confident that the 75 years is the right, correct number of anticipated space available at Glendale Cemetery.
But even if, I mean, it isn't likely that, because of the position of that property, would it ever be a place where graves?
I think that's, yeah, Ben, I think I understand the question a little
Yeah, that was
differently.
Yep.
kind
I
of-
think the question is, in this particular property, what's our viewpoint on it? And we've said before, and I'll say again tonight, that we wouldn't see developing the cemetery up to Franklin Avenue. We'd see the area that fronts on Franklin Avenue as developing in a manner consistent with the rest of Franklin Avenue. Now, how that happens is really a function outside of Parks and Recreation. It's a plan and zoning and development function, but we would not see that and would not propose that to be burials up to the street level. And I think at some juncture, this decision would be made, whether it be this year or in 25 years or 5 years. as to whether or not this could be used for a different purpose.
What about the purpose of just allowing it to be open space? I mean, what's wrong with that? Or expanding the community gardens and not thinking about the prospect of actually developing, quote unquote, this space? I mean, you're right by a community center, you're right by a library. What's wrong with leaving it
As a
just the
park.
way it is, as open space
Nothing.
available to the public?
Nothing.
And in that case, we would have an opportunity to make that decision.
Right. Yep. Not our recommendation, but there's nothing wrong with it.
Also, if you go down Franklin, there's Stod Hills and there's the fitness area that's now abandoned, there's no one there. And I don't want to give up green space when I don't think that has been significantly looked at to be developed. I mean, if there's areas that need to be developed or redeveloped, I would rather the city would pursue that in with the developer rather than taking away the green space.
I had that question raised to me, and I think one of the members of the audience that's here to speak tonight may speak to that issue. And it's a concern, a valid concern or question that's been raised. I think not from the immediate neighborhoods, maybe more from Beaverdale. And here's my answer to it. It's not my issue. The use of Stogdale's property is a plan and zoning issue. It's an economic development issue. The question that's brought to me is this land that's approximately 2 acres excess, could it be sold for a different purpose other than cemetery? And we've made a determination to recommend to you that yes, it could be. The use of that is probably 75 years down the road, but if the use were next year, we would not see it as cemetery use. And it's not dedicated for open space use. It's dedicated for cemetery use. The question of whether we bring it into the park system is a different question.
Do we have that option?
Sure.
I wouldn't recommend it, but you do have that option. It's a 2-acre parcel that doesn't really serve a lot of need in and of itself. If you have an open space need that you have an interest in satisfying there, we have lots of land to the south of the community gardens. And again, I'd say that land also will be available over the course of the next 75 years and could be used for that purpose. But again, it's a policy issue for you, and we may or may not agree on it. I gather that.
For example, I was up there Sunday afternoon looking at it because I hadn't had the opportunity. When I was there, there were children playing kickball in that area, and there were people in the community gardens, and there were people on the trail. So I think the corollary to the suggestion to sell it is to convert it to a neighborhood park, because they're already using it as a park, and there is a picnic area there. So I think there are more than 2 options,
You're right.
cemetery or development.
Right.
And to tag on to the comment that was made, just 2 blocks north of that is a video warehouse building that's on at least 2 acres that's abandoned. So I guess that was something I thought. When I rode past the strip mall, boarded up, video warehouse boarded up, and then you come upon this green space where there are children playing, trees planted, looks like a park, being used as a park.
Your kickball space and that activity would be more suitable behind the community gardens, protected from the street, than it would be on the street.
That wasn't my decision. They were supervised by
Yeah.
adults who were in the garden, and they seemed to be playing and having a great time. So to me, that's part of the purpose of the park. And in our the thing that we wrote early in first of the year, we said that having fun in green spaces was one of our missions. And I guess it concerns me that this is the second time in 1 year that we've been asked to get rid of green space instead of acquire green space. And that's just a basic philosophical problem, I think. And secondly, I guess the process of, if we decided as a park board that we wanted to say that isn't cemetery space, but it is parkland or development, then I think that, again, the process would be to designate it as property that maybe would be developed, then put it out, get an official appraisal, which we haven't done, and put it out to bid. And if we're going to make money on it, let's make some real money and then designate that back to the park board system.
There's
So
there's
guess
a couple
the
of questions there, I
process
think. Let me try to address both in reverse order, because I'm not sure I've got the first one. But on the second one, the council has a process that the manager reported to them for the disposition of land, and it's something like this. In the way of parkland, it's up to the staff to assess a proposal that comes in and look at potential value, zoning, look at the proposal, and talk internally as to whether or not staff believes it's something that should be entertained. Even if we don't, it could come to the board directly for you to act on and review. But the council then looks, as a matter of this policy, administrative policy by the manager, for a recommendation from the park board on whether or not it's excess. Not whether the development's a good development, whether the appraisal is an appraisal, whether you get to keep the money, on whether it's excess. Is this land that could be considered excess and removed from either the cemetery or the park and open space system? After that point, you're not done necessarily, because it's up to the council then to decide if they agree whether or not it's excess. They may determine it not to be, and it ends right there. If they determine it to be excess, we're not done yet, because in many cases there'll be a specific development proposal that has to be reviewed. There'll be a determination as to whether that development should be opened competitively and whether or not there should be an RFP issued. There'll be an appraisal done of the land, more than likely, at that juncture. And ultimately, there may even be a zoning requirement change. In most cases, there will be. In this particular case, the area is zoned R160. This proposal is for a different level of zoning, so it will require a different zoning. My understanding is that that would be what's called a planned unit development here. And that's why it's 2 acres, because it has to be 2 to get to that level of planning. In that case, as one of the adjacent neighbors, we're again contacted to provide input to that process. My only point of speaking about it like that is it's not a linear, consecutive process. It's a dynamic process that has points of entry and exit along the way. And you'll continue to have that. And what was the first thing then, Paula, that you asked?
Whether, frankly, I can't remember.
Help me out here.
I think Paula was talking more about then
That
leaving it as a park space and
having the option.
and maintaining it then.
Yeah, you certainly have that option. I guess I wanted to comment on, maybe it was then or the comments before. One thing that has happened, and it troubles me a little bit, we have had questions and we put issues in front of you to sell parkland 2 or 3 times in the last year. And those have been all the consequences I recall on development proposals that have come our way. We haven't had a lot of that in my history here. But we'll deal with them all in the same way, on face value. We'll apply to the best of our ability the current situation that's brought to us. It's not unusual that there's situations that have been necessarily supported because no one's asked us to sell off a portion of the middle of Union Park or Grandview Park or Greenwood Parks, where it is connected to the park and open space system and used actively. Instead, they've been other areas. I do want to tell you that I went back and looked at this just for my own kind of sense. Since 1994, when we've been kind of keeping records on parkland sales and acquisitions, we've acquired and added over 400 acres into the park system. We've sold somewhere between 10 and 12. So I want to be really clear about something. We're not in the business, and I said this to council a month or so ago, we're not proposing parkland sales. We're not in some effort to try to dispose of and reduce the amount of acreage. In fact, we're increasing the amount of acreage. Moreover, and we'll probably continue to do that. But will we respond to individual deals that come to us that may have a value in the community and necessarily in our land that can be separated from the park system? We'll give you our best advice and opinion. The process is that you, as representing the citizens, get to vote on that and decide. It goes to the city council and there's another vote. And we're as staff one piece in that process. but we're not going to shy away from what we think is the right thing to do, although it's not necessarily popular.
Is excess cemetery property, does that mean excess park and rec property?
Yes. Not parks, but park and recreation, because by the city code in Des Moines, the Park and Recreation Board and the department manages cemeteries.
Don, I had a question for your staff about, some comments about, well, this neighborhood, this area of the city doesn't have its fair share of parks. And I've heard that before, and staff may have a definite opinion on whether that is the case. And that is the case. I mean, I'm looking at this site, and, a fourth of it is concrete parking lot. It's not a, green space, but if there's excess cemetery space, what about long-term planning? Is there a need for a park in that area? And if so, what about the site just south of the community gardens? It's away from the road. Is that something that's been talked about? Or
Yeah, there's a couple of questions I think there. One is this issue of whether or not there's sufficient open space to serve the neighborhood, maybe immediate neighborhood, or even the more regional neighborhood. And there are a number of ways to look at that. Back in the 1970s, the National Park Service and National Recreation and Park Association had some standards at that point that talked about pocket parks and neighborhood parks and community parks and regional parks and what the distances ought to be, and they gave you a formula. And then you plug that formula in and you try to determine if your park system met the national standards. And it was done, moreover, because there was federal money at the time, and they were trying to determine whether or not they had to give you some federal money to develop more parks. The fact of the matter is it was very awkward because many of us found that we had 1,000-acre parks that were on the opposite side of 8-lane divided highways. And there might have been 1,000 parks serving that neighborhood that nobody could get to, but in another part of town you had 5 parks that were 2 acres each that were within walking distance. So it's a really difficult thing to set up some standard and say you need to have this much acreage. We have, though, because of this and other issues on the northwest side, taken time and looked at how we think the neighborhood is served. And the best we can do is provide our judgment, and then the neighborhood and the community react to it, is that we think the neighborhood is pretty well served. We have Tower, Ashby, Beaverdale, Whitmer, parks that serve the area. We have a recreational trail system that's very extensive. Riley, in addition, a recreational trail system that connects us to a lot of really wonderful open space. And we have a school system that provides additional green space, which in the old NRPA, National Park Service standards, wasn't even considered. Well, of course it should be considered, as maybe even a cemetery could be considered. Except I will tell you in this case, our cemeteries restrict the kind of recreational use I think we're talking about here today. So to answer your question, Mr. Ogle, we think it's served well, and it's all relative. The issue that I've had at sometimes with this issue of buying more land or developing more parks in a particular area is that I'm sitting with a couple of dozen park master plans in other areas of the city that haven't been touched that need redevelopment. We've got areas of the city that don't have as much land that we ought to be thinking about. So it's hard for me to recommend to you that we put more resources here to build more parks when I think we're underserved in a more significant way in other areas.
is that area south, is that restricted right now? Because that's part of the cemetery that generally the public, so you're not going to find people playing kickball there because it's restricted?
The area that's on Franklin is restricted, and apparently there's people playing kickball there. But
and also the bike trail that we just put in, we would have to remove the bike trail, or they'd be playing on the bike trail kickball because there's a brand new bike trail going through, and there were several walkers and bikers.
Yeah.
So I don't know south of the community gardens where an equivalent green space would go. And who planted the trees there?
We did. The city
We
did.
did. So at some point, we must have thought that it was a nice enough area to plant some trees.
Yeah.
And again, people were using it. So we'd have to reroute the bike trail, which I guess could be done, but we just constructed the bike trail. So
I feel like we're doing hurry up fast. Why are we waiving the second reading?
Yeah.
That's a way that Joe characterized it. It's probably mostly accurate because we have 2 months usually, but I will tell you that you do have a cemetery subcommittee that acted on this, and there have been other occasions where, because you've got that process outside of a process where things are brought to you independently, that you've acted on one meeting. I've been asked to. That's why it's on your agenda, because the developer and the city process that would require rezoning is such that the developer would like to know, I think by August or September 1st, that this is on or off so they can, go a different direction if this doesn't work out. But for me, the easier reason is that we've thought through this extensively. I haven't heard questions that we haven't answered yet. I think it's going to come down to a matter of policy making in your mind, and I don't think there's any information that you don't have that you'll have in a month. Having said that, Joe's exactly right. You want to defer this for a month? I've talked to the manager, and I told him it probably wouldn't happen tonight, probably would happen in a month. He may come back and say, could the board do something so council can act before the end of June? I'd ask for a special meeting then. We've done those before too. So it's, it doesn't have to be done tonight, but it is my recommendation to move it tonight.
I have a comment. Maybe I've been on Urban Conservation Committee too long, but excess green space just is a misnomer. I mean, I cannot put those two together. I mean, it just doesn't work in my head at all.
Joe? I mean, I can appreciate the staff's perspective of excess cemetery space, given your analysis that they wouldn't need it for 75 years, but excess open space, even if you don't program it, don't put anything on it, we're just talking about an open area.
Right.
I don't think that's a bad thing, personally.
I don't either.
Well, I'd like to back up a little bit on some of this, because if it's excess cemetery space, that's what we would be declaring. We wouldn't be declaring it to be anything else but that. And as such, then, Parks and Rec would say we don't need that area as cemetery space any longer. It won't serve any purpose, and we've measured that out for the next 75 years and found that we don't have any use for it. And we're talking about 2 acres here in an area that actually I've studied, having gone through a little bit of this one time before. Per capita, the people in this area are well served by park space. And if you really consider the northwest side of town, which if you consider the whole northwest side, it is deficient compared to some of the other sides of town. But in terms of how far people have to go to get to a park, on the northwest side, it's fairly well served. You have to also remember that on the northwest side of town, 70 acres of land is being worked on to be developed into a Ty Dam Memorial Peace Park or whatever it is, which will have lots of trails and hiking space and picnic grounds and playgrounds and so forth. And you might say, well, that's a private land. Well, we're finding out that even though the Ty Dam purchased the land, if we want to remove honeysuckle weed, which is an invasive species, the city has to get involved in it. If we want to change a window on a building there, the city's going to tell us whether we can do that or not. So basically that area, 70 acres of land there, is going to end up as some kind of recreational parks area for Des Moines' northwest side, with a bike trail leading right into it. So there will be a lot more space there in the future. My concern about this one is that if that's what we're doing, is declaring this as excess cemetery land, then it might have made it less complex if we knew anything else about it and just said, we don't need this land anymore. And a person who wants to develop a miniature golf course ice skating rink could come in and put a bid on it as well. Or somebody who wants to, I don't know, put a roller rink in there might come in and bid on it as well. But what we would be doing would be declaring that we no longer would be using that as cemetery space. I don't have a problem declaring it that way. I do, if there were other uses for it, though, that would be fine with me as well, because I would object to saying that it would be 2 acres of open green space that we are accepting the liability for, with kids playing there and so forth. And a little concern I have is our master plan for parks already, you know, I keep thinking of the people at Good Park who are waiting for their park to be upgraded, and I remember we told them 3 years ago we're going to try to do that. And if we would be taking on, it might seem small, 2 more acres, but it's taking on something that somebody has to check out and mow and do whatever needs to be done to it periodically in order to accept that liability.
But I think just leaving it be, not declaring it a park. not
We own
making
it.
We already
So
are
we're
doing
already
that.
doing
And
it.
Yeah.
so I don't see why we would have to worry any more about liability or maintenance issues than we do now, because it is part of the Park and Recreation land.
But if we take it off, we don't have to mow it anymore.
But even if we would just say, no, I don't want this to be excess at this time, then the land remains the way it has been for years, really since 1897.
With us maintaining it,
But
Okay.
we've been doing that.
yeah.
So it's not an issue of money or an issue of liability. It just remains what it is with no change. And that's by voting, no, we don't want to declare it excess. We're not saying, now turn it into a park. We're just saying, just let it be.
I 2 acres isn't really doing, I know it's just lying there and people would be, I guess they're playing kickball there, but they could play on kickball on the backside, on the south side as well. But, you know, I also look at the other part of it is by putting something in there, you're generating revenue in the Beaverdale area. And there, I think it was RDG that did a study, and it's an old one now, that the city of Des Moines, when this study was made, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, most of the city of Des Moines had gained population except for the Beaverdale area, which had lost population. And Beaverdale has been trying to instill some programs to counter that. You know, I don't know how senior citizens do that so much, but putting it up where you bring people in who go shopping and spend their money and generate a tax base to provide our police and fire and so forth with, I think is something we need to consider as well. By declaring it excess, whether it's that development or any other that would add activity and resources to the Beaverdale area.
I just got to weigh in a little bit. In terms of my idea of what I would consider green space and tree canopy and whatever, this 2-acre site doesn't excite me too much. A good chunk of it's concrete parking lot. It's not really a nature area. I understand that you can't have kids run around playing pickup games of kickball and baseball, but again, wonder if that is really a desired use and need in that area. Wonder about, now that we put in that Waveland Trail, whether we should open access to part of that cemetery property to some type of recreational use that requires minimal maintenance or oversight by the city. But I can't get real excited about this spot as, oh, we got to preserve this for green space. Given what I see around the area, I drive around there a lot and ride the bike trail. Quite frankly, I don't have any issue with opening up that 2-acre space for development, whether it be single-family homes, whether it be homes for seniors, or whether it be a skating rink or whatever. I can't get too excited about wanting to preserve that space.
I look at the community gardens too, and I'm really not very excited about sort of confining the community gardens behind some structure, three-story structure that, just isn't very compatible with community garden situations.
Isn't the parking lot currently used somewhat for the community gardens and that type of thing as well?
Mm-hmm.
I like it as green space.
I think in their plan, they had to allow that parking lot to be used for the community garden. That was part of the specifications.
Well, you have a right to add conditions to what your action is, and then, of course, we'd have a right to discuss that during the PUD process. But in conversations, the developer has offered that the parking requirement by code is going to far exceed what they believe they'll actually need. And so we believe we'd have that parking replaced, because that was a concern. As was parking, there's a church across the street, I think, that without any sort of a formal permit, they've got parking, they use the parking lot on Sundays. So we did see some benefit to that in terms of parking, at least not a disbenefit.
Who's the park board representative on the cemetery committee?
Suzette, Suzette Jensen.
Right. Okay.
Did they have a full presentation given to them?
I wasn't at those meetings, but I believe so.
Yes, the cemetery committee did have a full presentation delivered to them, as well as the 3 neighborhood meetings had a full presentation delivered to them as well. By a PowerPoint presentation, about 20 minutes long, question and answer period following each of those.
Other questions from the board for staff?
I guess, I don't know, I just feel like, I don't want the land to be gone. And then the only choice was, and that's not our call as to what's developed there, but if that was declared excess, I'm not comfortable with what the choice was. And I still worry about the strip mall and Stog Gills and all those areas that are not being aggressively looked at or marketed. And once that's gone, it's gone. You can't go back even in 75 years and say, you know what, I really would like that green space back, but you put a building there. That's not going to happen. And I think the trees that are there, just looking at the environment, it's too important, even though it's only 2 acres with 14 trees, to have it be lost. And I just feel very passionately about that loss of only 2 acres. It is still 2 acres of land. The end.
I'd really, if everybody's questions are answered, I'd love to hear from residents.
Does anybody else have any questions at this time? Of course, there'll be more chances later, but. So now what we'll do is we'll get comments from the audience, and of course you can ask questions of anybody who is at the podium, and then when that's all done, then we'll discuss it and decide what to do, if anything. Okay, let's lay out the ground rules for audience participation. To speak, come up to the podium and give your name and address. And there's a 3-minute time limit. Now, we won't enforce that real closely down to the exact second, but once you get past the 3 minutes, I'll kind of give you a signal that you need to wrap things up. And then I'll also make this comment that if you're getting off topic, like at the public meeting, there were some people who got off on, they just wanted to talk about Rice Field, for instance. I think that's off topic, so I'll try and steer you back on topic, and then, of course, that counts against your time. So I recommend that you stay on the topic that we're voting on tonight, if we vote. So with that said, anyone who wants to talk, why don't you come up and line up? Or does anybody want to talk? Maybe not.
My name is Ray Keebles, and I live at 5817 Clark Street, which
What
is
was your
just...
name again?
What, pardon?
I didn't get your name.
Ray Keebles.
Thank you, Ray.
And we live at 5817 Clark Street, which is just west of Merle Hay Road, just south of this area. We have lived there for 50 years. As far as the green space, I wanted to mention the community, the senior center that was built, the Northwest Community Center, wasn't that built on this parkland also? And didn't you go through the same thing for that you're talking about for this? That was a green space that went all the way from the library all the way west to the parking lot, or that parking place, and that parking place was for a ball diamond. They used to have a softball diamond there. We used to play softball over there. And so the community center took most of the green space there. And I wondered, didn't you go through this whole process to decide on the community center when it was put in? And another comment I wanted to make, or idea, is if you sell this, I've been hearing like $250,000, that money could be used to build a real nice, beautiful retaining wall around the pond that the retaining wall is gone now and it's sinking in, falling in. So there's my comments.
Thank you, Ray.
Is the community center, though, is that a public project, though, or versus?
It was a Polk County project, right? Yep.
It's not like a developer.
At some point in time, if you want, I should mention Phil Wegman, who's the city's real estate manager, is here. He could speak to the issue of value. There's been a number used that's not representing an actual appraisal. And I think Phil would tell you he's had some preliminary information, but he's not representing that 250,000 number is the number. And I don't know, maybe, Phil, it's time for you to maybe address that.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, Phil Wagaman with the city's real estate division. Don is correct. Originally, we thought a value of maybe $200,000 to $250,000 for this property, but we have hired an independent appraisal done. We've received some preliminary information, but we don't have an approved value at this point. The preliminary information I do have indicates that the value is going to be lower than that, so. But we don't have an approved number at this point.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Anyone else from the audience?
Good evening.
And to save time, if you want to talk, why don't you go ahead and line up against the wall there so we don't have to wait for people to come up one at a time?
Chris Jansen at 2206 52nd Street, just north. The only question I have is a little bit more on just the action that you are considering taking, and that would be declaring whether this is excess cemetery property. If you look at a map of the cemetery that's on the Des Moines website, there's a dotted line that basically cuts out this entire section. And then likewise, if you go on to the parks list for the city of Des Moines, this is listed as a park, and it has a fact sheet as a park and all those things. So I'm just generally curious as to why the action is to declare it excess property for the cemetery when it obviously is already in the park system, being promoted as a park, being marketed as a park. And then the recent improvements that have happened in the area also would lead one to believe in the area and anyone looking on the website that it is a park. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Hi, I'm Mike Camper, live at 1804 38th Street. I'm the Beaverdale neighborhood president. Chairman Galloway, board members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Basically, the May 17th meeting, public meeting, was the first time that some of our board members and Beaverdale residents attended the presentation or any presentation on the proposed site and proposed development. At that meeting, I was asked to draft a letter in response to it from the B&A's perspective. And the letter that you have received is basically a straw poll I took from talking to our board members and talking to some of the residents who were at the meeting, who pulled me aside afterwards or have called me, type of thing. I would consider it, and I mentioned it, not an official response from the Beaverdale Neighborhood Association because, quite frankly, our board has not had an opportunity to sit and meet face to face and talk about everything that transpired in this May 17th meeting, because I basically sent this off 2 days after that meeting. But that said, I mean, it is a unique opportunity with the site. It's kind of, in a way, kind of very interesting because it is truly in Waveland Park's neighborhood. It's right across the street from Merle Hay Neighborhood Association, and it's literally just 3 blocks from the end of our boundaries on Beaverdale. So it's kind of one of those, again, what park do you go to or what green space do you go to? It kind of depends on where you live, and this is kind of one that does get kind of shared by all neighborhood associations. Basically, our message from taking the poll and stuff was just kind of looking at the bigger picture, and I recognize it's not your position to try to figure out the development of the neighborhood, but back to the strip mall and Stodgegills and kind of the fitness center that's just 2 blocks east. This was one of the things that kept coming up when, just like I said, talking to our board. And I understand the Stodgegill site alone is not sufficient for this development. And also at the meeting on May 17th, when the strip mall came to mind, I'm sitting there thinking it's got a low occupancy because most of my visits is going to Marino's because it's one of the top 10 restaurants that I like to go to. And it's at night, and it's the only place lit up in that entire section. I did get an opportunity to drive by very quickly this morning, and if you just look at the smaller storefronts, I think there's like about 12. Again, I was just kind of drove through the parking lot, didn't get a chance to stop and look at all the stores, but there's several that are occupied, 8 or so, 7 or 8. So you've got like a 50-60% occupancy when you look at the low or smaller storefronts. But then if you add in the fitness center into that section, you're looking at less than 50% occupancy. And I can tell you from past experience that occupancy, I mean, there's stores in there now or businesses in there now that were not there a year ago or 2 years ago. So they have been able to fill in some of the smaller storefronts, but still you look at the site and it's less than 50% occupied. And where our residents and some of our board members were saying is like, at some point, the city's going to have to do something about this, or somebody's going to have to do something about it if we cannot keep those places filled, and potentially down the road we'll be spending many more dollars to renovate it, create a TIF or something to revitalize that area versus possibly something where the city kind of works together with the developer to help fund some of the demolition that might be needed to put that in. So what we were kind of thinking is trying to, if you could use the Stodgegills and the fitness center area. I know it's attached to the strip mall, but I don't know if it's kind of one of those situations where it's 2 buildings and then they just kind of put the facade together. Again, that's not a question. You guys have the expertise, but just looked at this as an opportunity to kind of get other departments of the city together and come up with kind of, I'll call it a comprehensive plan, and try to revitalize something before it has to sit there empty for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, type of thing. So that's, any questions for me?
Yeah, Mike, question, and this question has been asked before, well, it's come up before. Why not put it where Stockdale's is and the other buildings? Okay, what if the answer comes out to be that the developer has left no stone unturned, but that location just ain't going to work? Then what's B&A's position? Are they on this issue?
They'd appreciate that the effort was made, and if the other alternative sites just do not fit, then it's back to, and if this is the site, and if it is considered excess property, then, I mean, that will be fine. I mean, it's just, again, without talking to the rest of the board, but it was, the comment that I was receiving multiple times was try to keep this as the green space when you have, I call it blight for lack of a better word, 2 blocks over. Why not deal with that now versus waiting for it to deteriorate?
Right.
And, then it's kind of, then the neighborhood itself deteriorates until that's finally revitalized. So we just looked at this as an opportunity to try to do 2 things at the same time. Keep it green and try to revitalize something.
Okay, any other questions for Mike?
If the units are 40, if there's, I think you're talking about putting in 40 units in there, and those shops are empty right now, but we provide a service for the elderly 2 blocks away, would that do the same thing you're talking about and give the option to keep the tax base there and develop a new tax base?
That's one of the things that actually another board member and I talked about. The empty, smaller storefronts, I could see potentially being, a niche for that area. I don't know what you're going to put in Stajgil's or the fitness center when the senior living center is there or whatever other development goes there. I don't have an answer to that one. But like one of the things too that, I recognize as a resident and as a board member from a neighborhood, both Waveland and Merle Hay have in their plans to have a diversity of housing stock. And so this does kind of fit both of their needs because I think Waveland has one, Merle Hay has none. If you look at Beaverdale, which I think is why I'm getting quite a bit of comments, we have 4 with 2 of them that have occupancies. A 5th one will break ground either this fall or early spring. And so then others are looking at this as the 6th one just outside of our area. And if you live on 48th Street or 47th Street, which is where the boundary is, it's their backyard. So, any question? Okay, thank you.
Mike.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Erlmeyer, and I live at 2005 52nd Street. And if you would have extended the map just a little bit farther, I would have been about 2 more houses on there. And I know 250 feet isn't a lot that you guys sent the letters to, so I never received one being that close to that property. And I think a lot of my neighbors are like that. I just found out about this, that this was going on a week ago, and I was able to attend last week's meeting about it. Didn't know anything about it, but did form an opinion after being that, and I am opposed to it. If you start selling off this property, where are you guys going to start? Stop. Any land that's available that you say you aren't using, are you going to sell it off? And the other comment I wanted to make was to address the comment that you made, one of you guys over there made about increasing the population of the area. I can't see by what they plan to do with that development how that is going to increase when you're looking at single-person apartments and bringing in low-income people that are earning less than $30,000 a year, how they're going to pour money back into the community. I look at my block, I've lived there a year and a half, and everyone that has moved into the neighborhood is young or a young family, and they're going to be there a while, and they're going to put money back into it. And as people are looking for the houses in the area, they're going to look at that. There's low-income housing apartments there, and that the green space isn't there that their kids can go play on. And so I think it's doing the neighborhood a disservice long-term. So.
Can I ask you, since you live right over by there, you can probably talk to this better than anybody, but how do you think that, or how often do you see people out there using it as green space, as park space? Do they play kickball there a lot?
All the time. You've seen it more with the bike trail, that families are out riding and they'll stop in the little shelter house and the kids will run around for a while. And you see people all the time at the community gardens out there using it. And I would be, and I said this last week, I see that green space every morning when I drive to work. And that was one of the attractions when I bought my house in the neighborhood. And I would hate to see it that I go look at this 3-story building that takes up all the grass and space. You can't even see the community gardens anymore. So, I don't think you guys should sell it. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Jenny.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, my name is Bill Gray. I live at 4617 Franklin. I'm just right down the street. I'm right in the hood. I want to put things in perspective here to kind of get an idea because, this was plotted in 1897, purchased by the city for the purposes of having a cemetery. Those 2 acres right now, if they were to be plotted with about 800 plots per acre, at about $700 per plot at the basic lot, versus up to $3,200, we're sitting on $1 million to $2 million worth of property. Now, do we want to probably have it all the way up to Franklin? I don't know. I doubt that would be the case, but to be good stewards of the city money, we own the land, we have the land. If we want to use it for cemetery, it's there. The second thing I want to do, Tim's got a great project here. It really looks good. The problem is you got to separate it from what we're doing with the land. And we've already heard the comments of Franklin Plaza and Stogdill's. Again, if you're going to be good stewards of the city's money, this should not be the city of Des Moines being in competition with private developers. We need some help in that area. That Franklin Plaza is hurting. Stogdell's obviously closed with no hope of anybody asking or trying to do anything. What I would like to see would be somebody coming through, rather than coming through the Parks and Rec Board to purchase some land, let's get them involved in economic development. Let's get them over in the Community Development Department. Let's find some avenues, some grant money, see if we can get this up. And maybe we don't have to have it be a low income. Maybe we can move it into some upscale, condos that are going to benefit the entire community. And that way, we're not putting the city in competition with our own private developers. I think that's a very wrong approach we should be doing. The last thing we should do is be declaring it excess when we already have excess in the private area. So my position is that we should probably take a look at this. What can we do best for the area? I live in the area. I think we need to take a look at that first, and then we can determine, well, if we've done everything that we can, then maybe this is excess. I don't think it ever will be. In 75 years, I'm not going to be here. I don't think any of you guys are going to be here, but my grandkids will be, and it would be some use at that time. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but that's my view. I think it makes more sense for us to keep it. I don't care if it's green space. I don't care if they run balloons out there. All I care about is that we don't get in competition with the private sector, and we keep good stewards of the city's money, because it's mine too. Any questions? Thank you very much. I'll meet the 6 o'clock hour. So.
Thank you, Bill.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk with you tonight. My name is Christine Pardee. I'm the president of the Waveland Park Neighborhood Association, and I live at 4321 University Avenue. I want to, before I take up all of my 3 minutes here, and I promise you that I will, I wanted to thank this board for all of your very thoughtful consideration. As you know, we've had a couple of opportunities to explore developments in Waveland Park, and the most recently was the Russ Parks development that's still an ongoing thing. But I want to say that we're very encouraged by the outcomes of that and the kinds of things that the park board members and the city park staff considered to try to strike a balance between all the different stakeholders that wanted to maintain open space but also expand the use of that particular space and explore development as well. Frankly, that was one of the things that when our neighborhood association board got together, it was something that was important to us, that was a thoughtful process, and so we were encouraged by that. I want to respond to a number of things today. As you know, the Waveland Park Neighborhood Association did choose to support this particular project, and a number of concerns are always brought up as far as maintaining open space and the importance of not selling land. And I know that you're going to vote, or maybe not tonight, on whether or not this is excess. But Waveland Park has approximately 50% of the Waveland Park neighborhood is kind of open space. There's an expansive amount of use in Glendale Cemetery, whether it's supposed to occur or not, of all different kinds of recreational activity, biking, hiking, birding. People are using the cemetery. People are using, other areas in our neighborhood as well. Perkins School also is something that gets utilized. And so I appreciate the consideration of the fact that we do have a very active neighborhood. Folks are really, really concerned and want to be able to have access to recreation and really enjoy their space. The May 17th meeting was the fourth time, technically, that our board members and our residents also had an opportunity to really hear about this. One of the things that we asked for the developer, Tim Morrow, to do a little bit more due diligence on, and it was something that Mike Camper brought up, was, is it possible to develop or redevelop Stodgels, or look at that space instead of buying, land that's there? Could that be developed? So we asked him, and certainly he could probably speak to this, to really do due diligence first, and really give us information on, is that feasible from a developer's perspective? How does that affect your bottom dollar? Because that would really maybe be an ideal situation. He can, of course, respond to that. But after we saw the information that he presented to us, from a financial standpoint, it didn't appear that was something that would work for them. So that did factor into our decision in support of this particular project. The community gardens also, and I think there was a board member that I mentioned that said something about the community gardens being planted maybe next to or close to a building. We think that's actually a good thing. You know, having access to fresh local food, having an opportunity for low-income seniors or anybody to really participate in that, we think that that's also a nice thing if that would occur as well. And so we see that more as a positive thing. We think that there's opportunities here to enhance that area, possibly if not enhance the community garden, to expand it, because that garden does have a waiting list, and we're anticipating that there will still be more folks that will be interested in having plots. And so I wanted to just comment on that too. We think that is a positive thing rather than something that we would really be concerned about. So do any of the board members have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Christine.
Okay, thanks.
Chairman Galloway, fellow board members, my name is Tim Morrow, Vice President of Curly Top LLC. I'm the reason we're all here. Don't throw any pens at the back of my head, please. I appreciate the time. We've taken a lot of time with this. It was very important to myself and my father that we did take time with this. We're members of the community. We grew up here. And this is a big deal. We don't go into this lightly, so know that. Hopefully I've answered a lot of questions. I've made ourselves open to answering any questions and things we've looked at. Keep to my 3-minute time frame here. I'll speak specifically to this other area, specifically Stogdills and that land. Our project is not a market rate apartment. We're not a market rate developer. We're getting involved with the Iowa Finance Authority's affordable housing program. Tight restrictions, finite amount of money to deal with. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. Once we know what the dollar amount is, how much rent will come in, because rents are restricted, we know what box we're in and what we can build with that money. Okay, so very, very restricted. Unlike maybe if I was a developer of just market rate apartments and I've got a whole bunch of cash laying in the bank, I can go buy the Stogdills building. I'm probably not saying that right, Stogdills. If you don't mind, I'm going to do this just so everybody can see. We did explore those other two sites. I would love nothing more than to look like a hero and go down to those two sites and make that area. And we're not opposed to looking at other areas. We really aren't. But as developers with this finite amount of money, we had to look at the 4900 block, very positive, very similar to this field. We think it would be a good opportunity to revitalize the dilapidated area. But specifically, 4944 Franklin, that's the strip mall. That's the one with the fitness center that is connected. It's privately owned. From what we can tell, Consolidated Real Estate owns it. And it has existing tenants. Right now, the value of that building is $1.1 million, including the building itself. We even went so far as to look at, could we, the Iowa Finance Authority program doesn't have to be new construction, it could be renovations. Could we renovate that building and try to keep the structure? Can't do it with a strip mall. At $1.1 million, that's assuming they would sell it at that amount, plus demolishing it, financially not feasible, unfortunately. Stogdill building, same thing, and it's too small. We need about 1.6 acres at a minimum to put the particular building we're looking at on. That's about half, little more than half. That also is owned by the Stogdill Trust. Don't know if it's for sale or not. There's no sale signs or anything of that nature. It too, including the building, is valued at $350,000. Assuming they sold it at assessed value, along with demolition, once again, for the site or for the actual purchase of the ground, not financially feasible. If there are other areas, as a developer, when we look at a piece of land like that, we looked at all of these factors, and this particular piece of land fits with what we do. We're not park builders. We don't do that. This is what we do. So hopefully everybody understands that we just didn't willy-nilly want to key in on that particular area. We really are conscious about that. So I'll be happy to answer questions about that as well. I'll make out one other point regards to the future value of this property. Well, let's not forget the property tax that we're required to pay. A lot of people ask, well, a tax credit, that doesn't, so you don't pay taxes? No, we pay taxes, we pay property taxes. This same building that we built over Southview is what it's called. The valuation is about $42,000 per year in property tax. Times that by 75 years, that's north of $3 million of value that the city gets during that time. So let's not forget that as far as looking at future revenue that could be generated for the city. I had a presentation that I presented to these folks, not enough time to obviously do that. I'd be happy to answer any questions directly. I think I probably took up more than my 3 minutes.
Did you check the video warehouse?
It did not.
Property?
No.
Because that looks about the same size.
Is that the corner, is that Franklin and Merle Hay?
2 blocks down.
Did not check that. And I will look into that. The thing you get into with an existing building, depending on when it's built, not only do you have demolition costs, you have, of course, cost to acquire the land. And depending on where that is, that kind of dictates financial feasibility. But then if the building was built, if it was built old enough, which that one probably isn't, you got, if there's asbestos, you have cleanup, you could have potential problems with the site itself. So it's much more than just finding a dilapidated building and let's see if we can renovate it. There are some other things, but I did not know that that one was vacant.
That's pretty big. And I guess my observation is that those properties that are in our existing lots, those lots are way, way more expensive.
Yes, for commercial use. The game we're in is tricky, and it's a hard little box that we got to make the numbers work, and it's difficult to do that. And again, when I say finite, we know the numbers. We built this building twice. I know how much I can pay for land, and we're at it.
I guess I'm a little puzzled if those lots are worth $1 million, then why is the same road without anything on it worth 250? That's quite a difference.
I don't know if it has something to do with being used for commercial and commercial use, and this one has a residential rating. I couldn't accurately answer that.
It would have to be zoned for, I don't know.
PUD. We're looking for a PUD.
A big difference.
Great. Yes.
I was at the May 17th meeting, and you mentioned at one time that you were looking at other property off Beaver that was 10 acres.
Lower Beaver Road. I said Beaver, you're right. It's Lower Beaver. I was incorrect. It's north of Douglas, Euclid. When does it turn into Euclid? Douglas, right around Veterans Hospital, north of the Veterans Hospital. There's 10 acres of land out there. There is a very dilapidated warehouse that sits on it. It's held privately for sale. It's $350,000 for all 10 acres. It's currently zoned R1. Well, clearly it wasn't zoned R1 when there was a warehouse on it. What we think happened is they rezoned it for potential use for single-family homes in there. We would have to go and rezone it, which we don't know how difficult that's going to be. Not to mention the fact that 350, even at 350, and demolition of those buildings is too much for what we can pay and make it work for our project. You know, for somebody who
But if it's 350 for 10 acres and you only want 2.
If they'll parcel it off, it's got potential. Yep. You know, and as a developer, we want to look at, that's a little further to the north. Somebody asked me at the meeting, why this space? Why this one? And when we look at what it's close to, what's around there, it fits our mold. We're going to probably start there and work our way out. That is, the Franklin property fits for what we do. Now, does it fit for the neighborhood? Maybe not. But it fits what we do. That was our direction. That's why we went that way.
A couple questions. Well, I know we're just, our vote is whether we're saying this is excess cemetery property, but I can't help but look at the end use and compare it to what the current use of the property is versus what you would potentially do. So let's ask a couple questions. One, reference to income levels, and then two, I'm sure there's a market study tied to this, and do you want to speak to the issue of the need for this type of housing in this area? Great question.
In the May 17th meeting, a lot of people brought up the point of need, that we don't need, that there's not enough need around here. And as a developer, there's nobody in this room who needs the need, this is going to sound funny, needs the need to be great more than me. If the need isn't there, I don't want to build there. My job as a developer, I'm financially tied to, can I fill this? Not can I fill it in 10 years, can I fill it in 9 months when I'm done? If I can't do that, they're into my hip to make up the difference. Okay, so need is huge. I've done some, I myself do some preliminary assessments, and we had a market study done on the Des Moines area 1 year ago, and I brought some stats. We don't really need to go through all that, because a market study does have to be done. It has to be ordered by the Iowa Finance Authority. They won't even let us order one because it has to be completely independent of what we do. So they order it, costs about $5,000. It happens at the time during the IFA application process, which is next January through, due by March. And that's going to tell us if there's a need or not. If there's no need, there's no project. IFA doesn't give us tax credits. Investors don't invest in it. We do not have a project. So there's a fail-safe there. I look at vacancy rates right now, and while the senior market has a very, very low vacancy rate, tells me there still is need in the Des Moines area. Southview that we built, those 80 units over there, is, you'd almost say, with the number of units that are over there, you'd say saturation. And our apartment that we haven't even got finished yet has 20 units spoken for. So I can speak to need. Some folks can maybe speak to need. The market study dictates true need. Yes.
I feel
Lloyd
like
did that.
chicken and the egg, but why wasn't the market study done before you approached the city for this land?
Yep, great question. $5,000. I can't order it. If I were to order one individually, I can't use the same market study company that Iowa Finance Authority uses, and then I'll be repaying for a new one when we apply. So now we're into $10,000 on a market study. So what I've done is the market study that we had done in the Des Moines area that's dated 1 year ago, I'd be happy to supply anybody with it if they wish, speaks to need in the Des Moines area, and pulls data from areas of town. I mean, I'll give you an example. I brought one. I mean, just since are you okay with that? This is from the market study that was done, dated 1 year ago. Bear with me here. And I just pulled a pair. Gosh, they'll make blood shoot out of your eyes. They're so complicated looking. I mean, they're like War and Peace. But this paragraph right here, 6.8, housing voids. This is from the VWB research. This is an independent company. This is not one that I paid for. I paid for it. This is not one I ordered. This is through Iowa Finance Authority. With only a 1% vacancy rate among age-restricted LIHTC. LIHTC means low-income housing tax credit projects. There is clearly a housing shortage for affordable product specifically designed for seniors in the site PMA. Further, the waiting lists, I mean, I can go on and read that, but what that paragraph is stating is all the statistics, the 130 pages prior to this, boil down to about this paragraph. And
so when it says site PMA, is that talking about the Franklin's Northwest?
it's not. It's 5 miles from my Southview site. If I were to compare South Side to Northwest Des Moines, South Side has far more units of low-income housing than Northwest Side does. So if it's solid there, why am I here? Great question. Why would I even come if I didn't think there was a need? This is what told me I feel there's a need. The Rose, which is fairly close to this particular area, is a low-income housing tax credit project for seniors. It has a 0% vacancy rate. According to Novogradac, that's an independent place, it's had a 1% vacancy rate over the last 5 years. So that, as a developer, tells me I think I'm pretty solid. I'm going to go on with the process. But there is a fail-safe there. If it's conducted and it's not there, there's no project.
Other questions for Tim? Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Next.
My name's Joanne Hanover, and I live at 1406 Merle Hay Road. So I guess you know I'm in the Merle Hay neighborhood. Our board did submit a letter to the Parks Department that they were in favor of it. We do not have any senior housing in the Merle Hay neighborhood. This is our revitalization plan, and the reason I'm here tonight is because I was the chairperson of this, and in our housing section, we specifically speak to the fact that there is not diverse housing in our neighborhood, townhomes, condos, and senior housing options. And that As many longtime residents age, there are no alternative living arrangements that can help to keep the long-term residents in the neighborhood. And that was part of the reason that our board did approve this. I'm not particularly here to say do this or don't do this. Those are the reasons that were behind what we decided. I can even suggest another area where he could buy something to build it that is next to the warehouse. There are 3 lots there that's owned by Mid-American Energy. And they have been vacant for years. That was the first project that the Merle Hayne Neighborhood Association tackled, was that there were all kinds of old electric equipment there with an old beat-up fence around it. And when I called Mid-American about it, they didn't even know they owned it. And they still do. They kept it because they might want it sometime. And that's right in line with the video warehouse and 3 more lots. Okay, thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Okay, last call for anybody in the audience. Going. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing part then and go to board discussion. What does the board want to do? I guess there's really 2 questions. One, do we decide to have a vote or not have a vote? And then if we decide to have a vote, then what are we going to vote on? But what does everybody think?
Yeah, that's my question. What are we going to vote on? I'm not clear.
Well, vote would be to declare that cemetery land excess. One of the problems we got in a deal like this is that the tax share program is highly competitive, so there's no guarantees that if we declare this excess, probably the developer would get an option from the city in the event they awarded the tax credits, they could develop on it. But if that's a very competitive program, there's no guarantees that it would get awarded credits. The Rust Parks development was much more tied to a very specific development, and quite frankly, if I was in a situation where it's maintain it as its current is versus having a senior housing project, I'd probably be inclined to vote to put a housing project there. But this application you're talking about isn't going to be submitted till January. One side of me says, well, then let's defer and maybe get more answers and let them explore a few other sites. The other side of me is like, gosh, we go through this time and again. Why we prolong the pain? If everybody on the board's already made up their mind, let's just have the vote and be done with it. So it's on the agenda. We voted at the beginning of the meeting to approve the agenda, so I'm inclined to vote on it. Assuming people have made up their minds, why keep going through this?
I would agree with Lloyd. I don't know, but my guess is people have pretty much made up their minds, and I don't know what another week of investigating other lots or other places, another month, would make a difference in terms of declaring this excess. It either we declare it excess or we don't. And it doesn't depend on, what's going to go in there.
I would agree. I think we probably have the information we need to vote.
Just to be clear, what's staff recommendation on this?
To declare it as excess cemetery land.
Joe, can I make a motion?
Sure. Let me ask this question first. Is there anybody who really feels strongly that we should postpone a vote? Or is there anybody who feels halfway strongly that we should postpone the vote.
Well, I feel halfway because I'm just not familiar enough with what's going on. I'm really torn because the citizens have come up here representing their neighborhood saying, we need this. They're saying we want this here. Now, whether or not we sell this land or put this land up for sale has nothing to do with what goes there. And I sympathize with neighborhoods with blight in them. I understand their needs, but I also understand that we've got a neighborhood here that is come forward and said we need this kind of housing, diverse housing in our area. And are we really doing ourselves a favor by not exploring this and giving it to the city council to let them make a decision on this? Is 2 acres going to make or break our park system at this point? I really don't see it as that big of a make or break for us. I think we should pass this to the council, let them have the option to see what's best for the other people that are involved here. We've got other groups that these folks are going to have to go through, planning and zoning, and those folks, we're just conservatives. See where we can go with this would be an opportunity for the neighborhood associations that have expressed interest in this project, and for us to maybe gain a tax base that's going to pay money to the city for the next 75 years instead of letting it sit. So I hate selling green space, but maybe there's the alternative that we had in our last option where they could find property to give back to us in a land swap or something. That option worked well for us last time. So I'm not opposed to that, but I don't think we've had enough opportunity to look into those kind of areas. That's my concern here. Is can we go with that route? Maybe looking and seeing if there's property close that they could purchase and we could do a land swap or something, which satisfies all the needs we have.
Well, let me ask Don, what Vince is proposing, is that something that could be done after we take a vote?
No.
Well, I think if you vote to recommend that it's excess, you should, because of the comments I've heard, you should attach conditions. And you can attach whatever conditions you want. Of course, the council can decide what they'd like you to do. Not to complicate and not even to disagree, but you've got to be wondering whether or not we'd like you to sell the land and use the money to buy new land. And I got to tell you, if it's worth $150,000 or $250,000, I'd like to have that money to build cemetery roads. Our cemeteries, which own this land at Glendale, our roads are in bad condition. And some revenue utilized for that purpose would be my preference versus going and buying 2 acres of land just to buy 2 acres of land. I don't have, or 5 or 10. I don't have something right now that tells me I need land right here. You have a committee that's working on this process, which, by the way, there's a meeting coming up, I think the second meeting of the committee, June 9th, which I hope you can attend. I think there's 7 members on the committee. We've had 1 meeting. And that committee is supposed to help tell us where it is we have deficiencies. Absent that, and knowing the need that we have at the cemetery, my attitude towards it would be to take that money and fix roads up at Glendale Cemetery.
Do we have any assurance that we would actually receive the money?
Yeah, we do.
No, but it's a part of a condition. If you're making a condition, you can make a condition that the money come back and be utilized in our capital improvement program. With your input, you can ask that it be utilized to make a land swap. I'm just telling you there's more than one reason the money could come back, and that would be my preference.
I guess my comments are that the vote in front of us right now is whether or not this is excess property. And I appreciate Mr. Morrow's slide demonstrating the other alternatives he looked at, but I can't help but think that this particular parcel is primarily attractive because it doesn't have anything on it. It makes his numbers work because he doesn't have to demo something. I'm not here to dispute or to determine what the housing needs are of the various neighborhoods. They may need low-income senior housing, and I would bet that there are plenty of other low-income senior housing developments that have happened on lots where they had existing buildings or whatever, and the numbers worked one way or another. And I think it would be a crime to give up 2 acres of contiguous park space because the numbers worked for Mr. Morrow to put this low-income housing there. To me, that's not the right thing to do. Mr. Morrow can look for other locations and hopefully can make his numbers work so that he can meet the needs of the community without basically what I think is taking the citizens' land, a very limited amount of land that we have available, away, whether we use it as cemetery 100 years from now or we just keep it exactly the way it is for the next 50.
And I guess my thoughts on the whole issue are, if we have excess land, then I'd rather just take some time and look at, okay, what can be considered excess land in our park system, and then say, okay, this should be sold, this should be sold, this should be sold, not just on a project-by-project basis of, oh, I want that land, sell it to me. That's my thought.
It sounds like you're ready to vote.
I'll call a question. Have we put a motion?
And I asked if I could make a motion, and Vince kind of talked about needing time, but you two sounded like you don't need a lot more time. You're ready to vote.
Well, there's no motion on the floor, so go for it.
I move that we accept the proposal by the staff and declare said property as excess property.
Further discussion, comments, questions?
Would you accept the amendment that, in the condition that it is sold, that the money go back to improve cemetery infrastructure?
I'd accept that amendment, but it's the council's. Yeah, sure.
Okay, one concern I have is that if we declare this excess, we kind of open the door. We all know what Mr. Morrow's proposal is, but we may lose control of the situation. The council may say, hey, let's just sell it to the highest bidder. And it might not be Mr. Morrow, it might be some other person, and they could put up a purple building or something next to our cemetery. So I'd like to see us kind of keep a string on whatever the ultimate plan is by whoever ultimately buys it, so that it comes back before us so that we can protect our cemetery from some ugly use or ugly appearing structure next door. I can't make a motion. I can't make a motion, so does anybody want to make an amendment to that effect? If not, then...
Could you restate that?
That whoever ultimately buys it would have to present their plan to us for approval to make sure it's compatible with the cemetery that's next door.
Joe, I don't think
Joe,
that's
I don't think, yeah.
Diction. I think that's planning and zoning. I served on planning and zoning for 7 years, and that's what planning and zoning and the architecture committee.
And they also have to go through the similar process, go through the neighborhood associations to get their, consensus and so on. So I don't think we are in the position to make that amendment. And I certainly would like to see it, go to the highest bidder. Then the money will come to Park and Recreation to improve our park system. I don't see anything wrong with that. But if we don't declare it excess at this time, that doesn't mean that
Good later.
Yeah.
Briefly.
sure.
Sure. I think we have a question.
Is there a question?
She called a
Oh,
question.
called the question. Okay, last chance for anybody to chime in.
I have a question on the voting.
Go ahead.
Dick left me a note for his proxy to see if, okay, I didn't think so, but, okay. Thanks.
And said no.
And I don't even know how he was going to vote. I just know we can't do that.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
The motion is to declare the property as excess property.
To keep it streaming.
Available for sale. And if it's sold, money would go back to infrastructure of the cemetery.
But
That's the amendment.
I didn't think we accepted the amendment.
That one we did.
We did?
We would put the condition that we would ask the city council,
Yeah,
should it
but
be
we
sold.
can't require.
No.
No, but we would
ask
request
for
that.
yeah.
Yeah, but wouldn't we do that without an amendment?
Yes.
I mean, wouldn't we ask city council whether we had an amendment to this motion or not? I'd rather keep it clean. Either we declare it excess or we don't, without adding excess things to it. I just think it's cleaner.
Yeah, I think it's procedurally, I didn't hear us accept the amendment to the motion.
Actually, it was.
We didn't vote on it. We didn't vote on it.
We didn't
Or the-
vote. No,
The person who moved accepted the amendment. I
as
think
a
is
friendly amendment.
Yes.
Here's what happened.
And who seconded,
There's not.
Vince.
and Vince, did you accept, so I guess it's been accepted as a friendly amendment.
I thought Lloyd seconded Dick's.
You beat me to it.
Just so we're all clear that we can ask anything we want, but we can't require it.
Right.
Okay, does everybody understand what we're voting on? It's to accept the staff recommendation with the provision that we're asking that the money be kept in the park system. Are we ready to vote? Okay, Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes?
Gelb.
No.
Vogel.
Yes.
Moderson.
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
No.
Nolan.
No.
Cahill.
No.
Pardon?
No.
No. Cremery.
No.
George.
No.
Scavo.
Yes.
Beltner.
No.
Murphy.
Yes.
Chin.
No.
Okay, the motion fails. So. So is there any other business for us to do on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Hearing no other business to do on item A, we'll move on to item B. If that's okay with everybody?
Go back to mine.
We'll go back to Don's report in fact.
I'll let you clear here for a second. Thanks, everyone, for coming, by the way, tonight. The really good discussion we had. That's appreciated, that we can have that good civil conversation about these items. I do have just a brief report to really change gears here. The natural resource inventory I have down here because we've made substantial progress on that work. As you might know, we hired Dr. Tom Rosberg from Drake University to conduct the study. He's been out in the park system for probably the last 60 days or so. And I've only got it on here because I'm just excited to report to you that he's really made substantial progress. And just as one little tidbit of information, he's actually found 2 plants in the park system that had previously never been located in Polk County. And so he is finding some very unique qualities to different areas of the system. It's exactly the kind of information we'd hope to have when we have these kinds of ideas come forward for use of the parks. It's invaluable information, so it's really much appreciated. It's also been suggested that I should offer to you, if any of you would ever like to go with him while he's doing these inventories, you're welcome to go. It's going to take some boots and long sleeves and long pants, so there's no poison ivy or the things that are out there that might cause a problem for you, but you'd be welcome to come. And I don't know exactly when it will be all completed, but I'm guessing that by fall we'd have substantial completion of that and some report back to you. And he'll come and make that report. McHenry Park planning is moving along nicely. The trail, I don't believe has been paved yet, but it's getting near that point. We are, again, excited about that project. You have later on in your agenda an action asking you to approve some guiding principles for downtown parks in the future. I'll leave it to that. That's really a redundant piece. The Robert D. Ray Asian Garden is a facility along north of the principal Riverwalk near the Botanical Center. We are near an agreement there that would provide for the long-term maintenance of that facility through the Riverfront Development Authority. I won't go any further into that except to tell you that I think that by later this year it will be officially open to the public and available for use. And under Did You Know, we were just talking on staff one day about there's things that I think you don't know that would be of interest to you. Number one is, did you know we have a 24-hour phone that's answered 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Anybody who has a customer service need or a question can call 237-1429, and we have about 20 SPM staff. Those are supervisory management staff who, frankly, on their own time are carrying this phone for a week long. I recognize that just because it's a real commitment. And it was something several years ago the staff came forward and asked to do. So it's pretty remarkable. I don't think you hardly ever get any phone calls, do you, folks? This time of year, it's not a fun duty to have that for the 7 days that are involved, because everybody who's got a picnic shelter rented or wants to know where the bike trail is or any of those kinds of information calls that.
What was the phone number again?
237-1429.
Thank you.
I want to introduce tonight, did you know we have a new marketing supervisor? She's here this evening. Jen Wolf, would you come up and introduce yourself and give us 30 or 45 minutes of your background. Be as brief as the interview process was. How's that sound?
I wore the wrong shoes for that. Hi, my name is Jennifer Wolf. Jen works too. Been with the department now for 3 weeks. I've met some of you, I think, through the process and through the time that I've been here. Previously was at Wellmark doing agent broker communications. Been in Des Moines now for about 5 years. West Des Moines. I'm learning lots of Des Moines now. There were parts of this town I've never seen before, and now I have seen. I couldn't get back to them if I tried, but we have a beautiful park system. I'm telling everybody that I've ever met that this is a great city, and I'm so glad to be a part of telling all the wonderful stories, and so glad to be here. So, anyway, anything else you want me to talk about? Thank you. Thank you.
Glad you're on board.
Jen is from Tipton, Iowa, right? And she also worked for Meredith and in the southeast part of the United States for a while. And she used to play softball. She was a pitcher.
Oh. Now I know why you hired me.
We know what it takes to be a pitcher. Sure, go ahead.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, Ben Page, Assistant Director. A few of you have asked, one of Jen's first roles will be working on the mission and vision statement. As you remember, we went through a pretty good process and we tabled it just to make sure that when we hire this new marketing person, that's their knowledge and skill set, that they would take a good look at it to make sure we're on the right path, and we'd be back to you. So I know she'll be busy working on that, and the rest of our staff will be helping her, but just a quick update for you, that's where that's at.
Yeah, I probably should end it on a more serious note to really reflect what went through. We went through to hire this position. In this economy, you might imagine a lot of interest. 104 applications, 40 certified by the Civil Service Board. We brought 15 in initially to make marketing presentations. We narrowed that group to an interview group of 6 and narrowed it again to 2. So it took a while. I think they were all wondering, but we went and put them through quite a process, and we involved our marketing committee. They were really helpful. We have, of course, John Cahill's a part of that, but 2 other professionals in business, and they were most helpful. And it was a really tough call, and after 3 weeks, I can tell you we made the right decision. So we're happy with how that's moving forward. Two other things. The Main Street USA Conference is in Des Moines. It's the first time it's been hosted in this size city. The next smallest city, I'm told, is Oklahoma City. This is usually in Denver and Boston and San Francisco and Miami and places like that. And so it's really remarkable for Des Moines to get it. I spent last Saturday morning walking the downtown with 30 architecture and urban planning professionals from big firms that do great planning throughout the country, and their jaw was down most of the time. I can't overemphasize what they thought of what they saw. Between Western Gateway, East Locust, the Papa John Sculpture Park, a tour of the Riverwalk, the rehabilitation of the library for the World Food Prize, and the investment. They were remarkably impressed. And so we think we've got something great, but to have 30 people of that caliber who are have an eye for detail, architects, it was very, very comforting and reassuring, and I wanted to share that with you. And finally, did you know the Park and Recreation Department helped found the Greater Des Moines Sports Commission back in 1993, and that's the commission today that brings a lot of amateur sports into our city. It was a few of us that were involved in that as founding members, and it's a very important part of the Conventioners and Visitors Bureau today. So that's it for Did You Know?
Thank you, Don. Any questions for Don about his report or about anything?
Don, did you want to mention the meeting that's going to be Thursday night?
Yeah, might as well do that right now. Actually, May 26th, Thursday evening, there'll be a meeting concerning the Grand Avenue Bridge replacement and its effect on Waterbury neighborhood. And of course, we have a trail that's in that location too. That meeting will be held here in the council chambers at 7 p.m. Members of the engineering department, traffic and safety from Des Moines and West Des Moines will both be here. So if you have an interest in that, we'll have staff here at that meeting also. Lots of bridges being rebuilt in the Des Moines area, and some frustration by people. But if you remember what happened to some bridges in this country a few years ago, I think the entire country has really done a better job of looking at its bridges and making those updates. And so the minor inconvenience, I think, is certainly worth the safety that comes with it long term, which is inconvenient to the park system too, by the way, but nevertheless is necessary.
So thanks for bringing that to our attention, Susan. Any other questions for Don? Okay, let's move on to item B for board action, the bike master plan.
This is a summary of many months of work. I'm not going to reiterate this to you tonight, except to say a couple things. It's had a long process of a lot of input, and it's had the premier design firm in the country that does bicycle master planning involved. That's number one. Number two, it recommends about 600 miles of bike lanes and recreational trails, about 3 times what we have today. 400 of that would be on streets, 200 in recreational trails. And if you think about that, we have 42 today, and we're really proud of that. So it's an extensive plan. And it's a 20-year plan, so it's not anything that will happen tomorrow. Beyond that, there's a series of goals that are related to health of the community, economic development, and changing our society from being dependent upon the automobile to being more independent from fossil fuels. So it's a great report. It has a tremendous set of recommendations. It should, if you approve it tonight, it'll go to the City Council in 2 weeks for their adoption, and then we'll all have to work together really hard to make sure we find ways to implement it as we build and rebuild our transportation system in the city. Unfortunately, Richard Brown, who's the local architect behind it, is not here this evening. Richard's ill, but I'll try to answer questions, as will Kevin Moran if you have them. We recommend approval.
So let's get started off with a motion.
I move that we approve it.
Second.
Any questions or comments? We had a presentation last month, I know, on this. So. Are we ready to vote? Okay, Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Gelb.
Yes.
Ogle. Yes. Moderson. Yes. Annie Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cremery. Yes. George.
Yes.
Scavo. Yes. Feltner.
Yes.
It is approved. Next, we'll move on to item C for board action on the dog park rules.
You had this in front of you before. and we recommend approval of the rules and requirements to purchase a dog permit.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I saw where they had changes required to establish vicious animals to be allowed. Does that have to be a change in the ordinance then for that, or how do we do this?
No, actually, the way we're going to handle vicious animals is the way they're handled in the rest of the community, is that if you have your vicious animal as defined by the law on a leash, you're okay to be in the park. I will tell you that we've had some spirited discussion within staff as to how we'd handle this, and we looked at a recommendation from some staff to not allow vicious animals in the park at all. We're not recommending that to you, but we're continuing to research it. We're not today because we'd be the first place that we can find in the country that did that. And we do have an ordinance in place today that allows for the control of that situation. So we're not recommending it today, but we're still researching it further. If we were to recommend it, we'll have to go through a process, frankly, beyond what we've done. People who own those vicious animals, pit bulls or one of the breeds, would need to be notified. They'd need to have some due process to hear that out, I think, before we brought it back to you.
But they're allowed off leash within the dog park?
No, they're not. They are not.
Oh, they have to be on leash?
On leash, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't very clear there. Every other dog can be off leash. If you have a vicious dog as defined by Des Moines ordinance, you'd have to keep them on leash in the dog park.
Okay. I feel better about that then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Along those lines, I did have one question. I know we're going to be issued the dog owner's going to be issued a permit. And I wondered, for licensing, the permits, if it's a spayed or neutered animal, the permits are lower than if it's an intact animal. And this relates to the aggressiveness also, particularly for males. And so I wondered, was there any discussion about having that differentiation for the permit process? That I think it would be worth considering, just because it would encourage spay-neuter, which I think is a good thing that our city has already committed itself to. And secondly, I think it would reduce aggressive acts in the park. So I just wondered if you'd given any thought to that.
You know, I don't know that we really thought about our fee in that way. I think, if my memory is right, you've adopted that fee, and that fee has gone forward to City Council. Am I right in that, John?
I think so.
So you've taken that action.
Okay.
And we didn't consider it. I will tell you that our fee is low, and we set the fee low to try to get as much voluntary compliance as possible.
That's nice.
So I'm comfortable with the fee that we have. John, is there something you'd like to add? Sure.
Chairman Galloway, members of the Park and Recreation Board, John Hagan, our Park and Rec Superintendent. When we discussed this with the city clerk, we decided that the discussion was they do offer a discount if they are spayed and neutered to get their license. We then will require you to have a license to have your permit. So essentially, you're getting the discount.
So you're getting
We're encouraging that to happen through that
that's
process.
wonderful.
Great question. Does that answer it?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good point, John.
Joe?
It says any dog exhibiting aggressive or unruly behavior in any of the city dog parks will be, its permit will be revoked. So how do you know? I mean, how would we know that someone was being aggressive? Because we're not going to have an attendant there all the time. I mean, do they call the 24/7 line and say, hello, there's an aggressive dog here? I don't know. How does that work?
We'd have to be able to substantiate that, and we'd have to have evidence of it. We'd do an investigation. It is our hope to have people there on occasion. We think we'll work with a volunteer group that have some ambassadors, some supervision there. So if we continued to have a problem, we'd probably contact that owner and say, we've had a complaint, and let's talk about it. We're not going to act swiftly without some evidence.
Don, would you be considering cell phone video evidence? Because, you know, that's one thing that I know is just constant now, whether it's, everybody's got a cell phone.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think we would.
So the people that are going to be there are, number one, dog lovers, and they're going to want to respect other people's property or other people's animals. So if that happens, there's going to be people there that will come forward and make sure
that it's a self-regulated situation, but it's a lot of people out there that want to make sure it goes.
Thanks, Vince. And thanks for your help, Vince, getting us through this process. Vince has organized the public meetings and continues to be involved in helping us move this forward, and we've had good public input, so thank you.
Okay, anything else about the dog park rules? Are we ready to vote? Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Gill.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Motorson.
Yes.
Kenny Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Carmery.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Feltner.
Yes.
The rules are approved. Next, we'll move on to item D for board action relating to the downtown programming and maintenance agreement.
The current agreement calls for there to be a coordinated downtown maintenance committee that consists of the city and the Riverfront Development Authority and the Downtown Community Alliance, or the business sector. We've been meeting now for several years since the downtown businesses agreed to tax themselves at a higher rate to pay for improved services, more maintenance, more flowers, that sort of thing, and that's worked out really well. That group's control and management through the DCA has been limited to maintenance. Even though the city provides maintenance downtown, very few people know, probably could have been, did you know, that they actually hire us to do that. And we are paid to provide that maintenance as a part of a competitive bid process. Now, the truth is the city has also agreed to contribute some money towards that, so instead of money, we provide in-kind work. It's worked out well. A few months ago, the DCA and Glenn Lyons came to us and said, would you like to also include in this group and under our supervision scheduling and programming downtown? We thought about it for a long time and decided it was a good idea for a couple of reasons. One, to have it coordinated with our efforts in the committee, and secondly, and most importantly, I think for us, to not have that responsibility allows us to spend more staff time on parks outside of the downtown area. We spend quite a bit of time managing events and the related programs of downtown, and we have a great working relationship with DCA, so we're very comfortable. So I turn your attention to page 2 of the communication, and essentially those 8 or so, I think 9 bullet points on there that talk about what we'd expect in this agreement. That's what we're asking you to approve today. I attached the simple 3-page agreement that we have with the Community Alliance and RDA, and we would be asking those organizations and ultimately the City Council to amend this agreement to place this authority under this joint group. We've been really careful to make sure everybody is clear that these continue to be downtown parks. They're accessible to the public, have the same rules and regulations, and they don't in any way become anything but a public space.
Marion.
I noticed, Don, on page 2, the principal Riverwalk includes, there are 3 items that are asterisked: the Brenton Skating Plaza, the Simon Estes Theater, and the Robert D. Ray Asian Gardens.
Oh, okay.
What's the significance of those asterisks, number 1? I didn't see any reference later on.
Come on up. You know the answer? Somebody does. I don't.
Chairman Galloway, members of the board, Tiva Dawson, Recreation Manager. I believe the ones that are asterisked are currently not under the contract for management of operation downtown for maintenance.
That's exactly right. Way to go. Okay. That's the missing puzzle, yep.
Yep, sorry we missed it.
Brenton Skating Plaza is operated only by RDA. We do the Simon Estes Amphitheater scheduling, and Robert D. Ray Asian Gardens is not online yet. So that's exactly right. Yeah.
So now they'll be both under the maintenance and programming.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say, too, though, is that those are current ones. The Center Street Pedestrian Bridge is also ours. They haven't been doing, what's not complete in that answer is that they haven't been doing any of these. These are all the Hanson Triangle, the HubSpot, Union Pacific Railroad. Those are new. There's not much programming or marketing going on there, frankly, but they also are under the auspices of the city right now. So every one of these will go to the DCA for, if you want to rent the railroad bridge for a wedding, you'll call DCA, not the city.
Right.
Under our regulations, they'll administer that then.
Okay, so.
And they'll keep the fees too, by the way. They'll keep the revenue from that.
Going to say, I think
Right.
they keep the revenue,
Yes.
right?
Will the Parks Department still be reviewing, for example, the Brenton Skating Plaza's rental rates?
Yes. Yes, that'll continue to come back to you.
Yep. If you notice, under the listing of the sites, we do mention that they, council will adopt the fees based on your recommendations.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further comments? Are we ready to vote? Rebecca, do you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Gelb.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Motorson.
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cremery.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Feltner.
Yes.
It is approved. Next, we'll move on to item E for board action, the Elm Grove Culvert Expansion Project. Let's start off, is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Is there any staff presentation on this?
You know, I think the explanation that we have is in the letter is appropriate. The main thing to point out is that the executive board had a concern about the compensation back to the city for this item, and I think we've negotiated something that's very fair, that as a part of the project, they'll make some improvements that include our stormwater management of the area. Actually, they're not obligated to, you know, these are two city departments that are obligated, nor is there any history of any compensation between us on this. This is not the WRA, which is a separate utility. This is the City Public Works Stormwater Utility. So we're very satisfied with this negotiation with them. And it will actually help us provide a more suitable area for future cemetery use in the adjacent area because they'll dry it out with some of their drainage work. And by the way, it's a very necessary project. If you've been down Army Post Road, it's literally collapsing there at the intersection of Indianola and Army Post as a consequence of floods of 2008 and 10. Very necessary.
Any questions, comments, or discussion?
I just had a comment about the cemetery itself. Don, did we take down the fence that ran along Indianola Road there?
We did.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
Trees are planted.
Yeah, we did, and we're not quite done there. They're probably, when Indianola continued extension there gets improved, we'll probably do some more improvements there, but the fence was an eyesore, and we're trying to work on that entrance, and the roadways need paving and a lot of work. Some of you may not know this. We just took that cemetery over about 1.5 years ago. It's like many in Iowa, if it goes into bankruptcy, municipalities are required to take it over, and so we have, and we're trying to provide good service there. And actually, there are several burials there a month still, so it's very active.
Anything else? Are we ready to vote? Rebecca, would you call the roll, please?
Galloway.
Yes.
Gelb.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Motorson.
Yes.
Haney Vanderhaar.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Cremery.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Scavo.
Yes.
Feltner.
Yes.
It is approved.
Yeah. Midnight.
Okay, I guess we're still hanging on with the quorum here, barely. So we'll try and move quickly here to receive and file item F, Family Self-Sufficiency Program Request.
Yeah, I don't have any additional feedback other than what's in the report.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments, discussion? All in favor of receiving and filing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Next, receive and file item G, Heritage Carousel Fees.
So move to accept. Unless there are questions.
Second.
Second.
Comments, questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Next, item H, to receive and file the Botanical Center Agreement.
That's in your packet. It has been adopted, but we'd like to have you have a copy of it and have a record that you have a copy of it. So there you go.
So I guess there's nothing we can do about it except
Say yes and thank you.
Except say hurrah.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Item I, Walk 100 Miles Project, to receive and file.
Besides the receive and file, if there's any of you that would like to volunteer, get involved in this project, if you've read this is a really interesting concept that would engage the Des Moines City Council and Mayor into a walking program citywide. Recreation staff, Tiva, and maybe some of her staff brought this forward. I think it's a great idea. We wanted to put it in front of you because we'd like to get you connected to it. And what we're suggesting actually is that you communicate to the City Council your interest in this. It was suggested by one of the council members earlier this year that if you've got ideas that you'd want the council to consider, that you go on the agenda as a communication. We think this is a good example of where you should do that.
Is there a motion?
Resounding one.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it appropriate for the park board to write a letter saying
Yes.
that we? Oh, let's do that.
I'd like you to do that. Absolutely.
Can we do that as a group? Good. And then also we could present oral comments if we
Right.
wanted.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's good,
We'll draft that for you.
good.
Put it on the council agenda the first meeting in June.
So is there a second?
Second.
And as part of the receive and file, we'll be transmitting this letter. Is that okay with everybody? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Next, we'll move on to receive and file item J, the slate of officers, presented by Marion Gelb.
Okay, well, the nominating committee consisted of Carol, George, Dick Thornton, and I, and the slate of officers that we're recommending is Joe Galloway for chair, Carol George for vice chair, Dick Thornton, Susan Nolan, and Susan Koenig Vanderhaar for the executive committee. And I should note that we're requesting that Rule 12 of the Park Board rules, which states that board officers can only serve 2 consecutive terms, be suspended so that Joe Galloway can continue as our chair. We have the authority to suspend our rules pursuant to rule number 37. Luckily, we're not voting on this tonight because to suspend that requires 2/3 of a majority of the full board to vote on that. This is just a receive and file, so I'm assuming we can go ahead and receive and file this, and then we'll have to probably at the next meeting vote to suspend Rule 12 so Joe can continue to serve as chair. And then vote on the slate of officers. I would say, maybe not even parenthetically, that the nominating committee felt that Joe's leadership of the park board has been outstanding in the years that he's been serving as chair. The personal time that he dedicates to go to meetings, to make sure everybody is aware of the agenda and questions regarding any agenda items. He's always asking for input, and he's just done a great job of kind of keeping this board going and moving forward. And we think it's in the board's best interest to have Joe continue in this leadership position. So we strongly endorse our slate of candidates here. And I would say we have an opportunity, should the board decide that we can obviously do this rule suspension, but I'll just throw it out that if we wanted to amend our rules for any reason to get rid of the 2-year requirement, we could also always create a subcommittee to look at amending those rules. To do that would require city council approval ultimately of whatever rules we came out with, but that's also an option available to the board.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Marion, but if someone else wants to take a crack at it, go for it.
Well, just so you know, our process was that we polled all of the individual board members as to their interest level in any of these positions, and nobody raised their hand saying they absolutely wanted to be chair, Joe, so I think they all thought you were a good pick.
Here, I was expecting a no-holds-barred battle for that.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, every board member has had an opportunity to express their interest, so we've given them that opportunity, and you came out on top.
Well, thank you again for the kind words, but if somebody reconsiders in the next month, there's still nominations from the floor are open at the next month's meeting, and anybody can run for any office. Is there a motion to receive and file Marion's report?
So moved.
So we had a motion and somebody
Second.
second. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is received and filed. Okay, Marketing Committee, John Cahill has had to leave. Why don't we postpone that?
Just say there is a marketing committee meeting, I believe, June 1st. That's what I have on my calendar. Is that right? Yep. In our office, you're all invited. The Land Planning Committee will be on June 9th. Important to have you there. We really need to have you. I think we've got 7 board members that are part of that. If you don't think you can make that, let us know, because we'll reschedule.
What time is that?
5 p.m.
Where?
Okay.
Where?
5 p.m. at the Park Service Center.
Park Service?
Southeast 20th
A
and Scott.
subcommittee.
Okay, and then Dr. Crompton, we'll postpone that till another time, but it was a complete success. And before I forget, I want to remind you that we're staying at 5 o'clock, even though it's going to be June. When we used to go to noon, forget that, those days are gone. Now it's 5 o'clock all the way through June, July, August, September. Anything else for the good of the cause?
Don, what's the progress report on the dog park fencing, and what's our date of opening estimate?
I don't know that I have anything different than before. Late summer, and we're preparing specs. Kevin, do you want to give an oral report? Sure. Thank you.
Chairman Galloway, members of the Park and Recreation Board, Kevin Moran, Parks Manager. Vince, we've got the bids out for the fence right now. We hope to get those back in a couple weeks here. They are planning to go to council to award it, I believe, June 9th or June 13th. Is that
23rd, I think.
Is that the 23rd? Well, I thought we were in the first meeting of the council.
If it is, it would be June 9th.
Okay. So, and then hopefully by the time we get it installed, get everything else out. So we're working with that. We're working with getting the restroom updated and some of the other work that's there. So July, beginning of July is what we're shooting for.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Super.
Good deal.
Good work. Way to go.
I want to thank whoever decided to put in the procedural rules. That's nice to have.
Yeah.
I think we'll thank Ann for that.
Thank you, John.
Anything else from anybody about anything? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
Good meeting.